James Comey speaking to me this afternoon. Well, let's pick up with Anthony Scaramucci, who was White House Director of Communications for just 11 days last summer when we met him on the White House lawn. He's remained close to many of those inside the administration, including President Trump himself. Thanks for coming in, Anthony. Let me just ask you some of those.
Writing your prompt, I said meaningful 11 days as opposed to just
I think I said memorable at one point,
but
and
that's okay.
You won't forget those.
I'm just editing for you Brits.
Thank you. James Comey said he doesn't hate Trump. He feels sorry for him. Yeah. Trump hates Comey, doesn't he? He called him a slime ball.
I mean, you have to understand the president definitely does not hate him. He probably, people won't believe this, but he's probably not spending a tremendous amount of mind share on him. But when he's tweeting about him or he's pushing back on him stylistically, he feels when he's being attacked, he's going to attack. But
so does he feel attacked now by this book? Is he threatened by it?
I think he thinks the book, no, I don't think he's threatened by it, but I think he thinks the book is unfair. He thinks there's a lot of characterizations in the book that are unfair. You and I both read the book, we can go over it, but I mean, and your viewers just heard a lot of the characterizations. I also think that, I've said this before, but FBI Director Comey was serving at the discretion of the President of the United States. All of us served at his discretion and leisure. If the President decided to fire me after 11 days, you dust yourself off and you get back in the game. He's the President, you're not.
It's different,
and
though,
he's got a very tough job.
Director for a 10-year tenure, which covered presidents. Steve Bannon called the firing of James Comey the biggest mistake in modern political history. You know where he's coming from with that.
So I would have said to you that Steve Bannon was correct about that because of the special prosecutor and the level of distraction that all of that has caused. But looking at the book, reading the book, listening to Director Comey's interviews, I now think that history is going to judge it a wise decision by President Trump.
Yeah,
the director is a closet Democrat. In the book, he treats the president unfavorably. He treats President Obama glowingly. He's not a huge fan of George W. Bush.
You talked about a level of distraction, right? Now, if the firing of Comey ultimately led to or began the investigation by Robert Mueller, you, as an American, presumably, would like to know whether there was collusion between the Trump campaign team.
Well, me as an American, I actually know. And so I've said consistently, repeatedly, that there was no collusion. You have to remember, forget the 11 days for a second. I was on the campaign for 2 years. I was on the president's executive transition team. I was part of the fundraising committee with Steve.
So you are 100% confident, as you sit here today, there was no collusion with the campaign team and the Russians?
I'm very confident. It was reported earlier today that Rod Rosenstein told the president that he's not a target in these investigations. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying it's reported, but that's more consistent with the facts that I know.
Why then?
So nobody knows everything about the situation, Emily, so I'm not going to sit there omnisciently telling you that I know definitively. I'm just saying I was around the rooms.
Why does the president then seem so scared of this? Why are there the rumors that he might be firing Robert Mueller or his deputy Rosenstein? Why has Giuliani just now in the last hour or so decided he's going to join this legal team? Let's just tell the viewers, join the legal team, he says, to resolve quickly the special counsel investigation. That doesn't sound like a confident team.
Several reasons. Let's just step back for a second. What's happened to the president over the last 15 months as it relates to people inside the White House is very unfair. He's the president of the United States. He's hired these people to come in and help him and give him advice, and he's allowed to ventilate to them. He's allowed to talk to them openly. They then take the open conversations and the brainstorming and whatever the frustrations may be, and they run out to the journalist community and they characterize them a certain way to make themselves feel important. It's very, very unfair to the president. And so when I got there, I looked through the system, really started identifying who the leakers were, and started going through the system and trying to retire those leakers, because a couple of more leakers retired and then the rest of the culture would tighten up and there'd be less leaking.
But that hasn't really happened. I mean, you heard what
it's not only happened, it hasn't not happened, it's gotten worse. And it's very, very unfair to the president. So if the president is in a quiet room in the study off the Oval and he turns to you and you're one of his deputies and he says, geez, this is really frustrating. Why don't I just fire Mueller and Rosenstein? With no intent to fire Mueller and Rosenstein, but he's just ventilating to you to get your reaction.
That would be a weird thing to say, though, wouldn't it? Why don't I just fire?
Why would anything? If he's the president of the United States, why is anything weird to say as you're looking at options, permutations, and you're expressing your point of view?
I'll tell you why it's weird to say, because when you hear James Comey say there is no one around the president who will stop him doing irascible things, who will stop him acting in a potentially dangerous way.
I'm actually offended by the comment, okay, because he wasn't on the campaign. I'm offended by the comment because he doesn't really understand the president's personality.
But is that true?
I'm actually offended by the comment because the mainstream media in the United States and perhaps the European media thinks that the president needs to be corralled or contained. The president has a bombastic style on Twitter. The president has a fiery campaign style. The president has used rhetoric that has actually brought the North Korean dictator to the negotiating table. Rhetoric that perhaps other presidents wouldn't have used, rhetoric that perhaps other diplomats wouldn't have used, but it was very successful in bringing the North Korean dictator to the table.
So is it working? Would you say his style is working?
I would say that his style is working in certain settings, and if I was there to advise him, I would say be more strategic on certain things that you're doing on Twitter, be more strategic in terms of the way you're communicating. You'll go way further, and your approval rating will go way up. If you look at the dashboard for the president, the economic dashboard in the United States is fantastic. Wages are up for the first time in 12 years. We're at full employment, and the economy is growing in the United States. Moreover, the tax cut is going to filter into that economy and lead to even greater growth and greater wage opportunity.
I think the comment was much more specific, and the comment went to the heart of what many people feel, which is that Donald Trump is a president with a style of an emperor. In other words, there are people around him who do not dare take him on. When you were there, and albeit for your memorable 11 days, did you ever confront him? Did you say that's not the thing to do? That is not the way to behave. That's not the right words to tweet. Would you do that?
First of all, he's the president of the United States. You don't talk to him like that. But if you ask me my honest opinion about something in a respectful way, I would tell him.
But generally, people who say their honest opinion get fired.
Hey, listen,
right?
Whatever my differences are with General Kelly, he talks to him directly. You don't think General Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, is not talking to the president candidly and directly? I disagree with all that stuff. I think Director Comey is wrong about that. But the thing he's most wrong about is the president does not need to be controlled or contained when he's in the Situation Room and he has to make very tough decisions and people's lives are at stake. He is very temperate and he's very on his game, and I think it's dishonest to portray him otherwise.
Potentially, Comey told me, the FBI would think twice about sharing information with him because they don't trust him.
So when he says something like that, I'm glad he's gone. Because
you don't think that's true?
He just spent 350 sanctimonious pages talking about the rule of law, and he just basically said that he was going to betray the commander-in-chief of the United States because he knows better than the commander-in-chief and the plurality of people in the Electoral College that put the commander-in-chief into the presidency. So that was the most sanctimonious and hypocritical statement that he made in your interview. Okay, and so he should probably rethink that and probably retract that statement because it's actually a ridiculous statement and it goes against the entire book that he just wrote about how he is, subordinate to the law like the rest of us. He talks about Plato's Republic in the book and then he says nonsense like that.
Do you know what? He answered an interview with me today, but one of the things that he brought up was this idea, and this goes, let's say, to the character of Trump.
President Trump.
Of President Trump. Which is that he stains everyone around him. When he goes low, to rephrase, they go lower. Do you recognize that he has that effect on people's behavior?
So I think that the level of coarseness in the dialogue has gotten worse. If you want to blame it only on the president, I think that's unfair. There are people on the Democratic side that are going as low, if not lower. And if you ask me, the question is, should we be there? I would say no. You don't see me doing that.
No,
okay?
but if I said to you...
I don't think we should be there, but we're there. If the president was sitting here next to me, he'd say the reason why he's there is because he's super frustrated, and if he didn't get there, he wouldn't be president. Because if he acted presidential during the campaign, it would have never happened for him.
You know what, 2 years ago...
So that's a big dilemma.
I would never be saying there are people out there who look at these extraordinary kind of outrageous claims by the Steele dossier about Moscow prostitutes peeing on each other at the president's request in a bed that the Obamas slept in. No one in their right minds would believe that. And now you have people, including the former FBI director, saying, I don't know what to believe. And you have people asking them the same questions. Would you believe something like that?
I don't believe it. I think
really, or do you think is it conceivable for you?
Let me put it to you this way. I actually don't care about it. Okay,
that's not the same thing.
I don't care what happens in people's personal lives. I sort of care about the fact that It was paid for by his opponents, and it was produced and paid for by his opponents, and he doesn't really 100% know what was in it, but he was willing to go get warrants related to it. I think that's unfair. Okay, so when you step back from the whole thing, there's unfairness and sanctimony and hypocrisy on both sides.
And you have been a very loyal, if you like, cheerleader for President Trump. Would you work for him again?
Cheerleader. I like that word. I'm not going to work for the president inside the White House, but will I work on the campaign? Probably, yes.
Anthony Scaramucci, thank you. Thanks for coming in.